This is why you should always lock your doors. Two teenage girls were working the night shift at a Pizza Hut when they realized it was 11 o'clock, meaning that it was time to close up shop. They turned off the lights, locked the doors, and began to walk outside. But as they approached their car, they realized that there was an old lady sitting in the front passenger seat. One of the girls opened the driver's side door and asked the old woman, "Can I help you?" before getting in. To which she replied, "I just need a ride home." The girls then told her that they needed to go back inside to call their moms and tell them that they'd be late. They immediately ran back inside, locked the doors, and proceeded to call the police, who showed up about 10 minutes later and arrested her. As it turns out, it was actually a 47-year-old man dressed up like an old woman, and the police found drugs and a knife on his body.
Housing on base. But there's one bedroom in the naval housing unit that Jack gets a really bad feeling from. He says it always feels like someone's in the room looking at him. So he just keeps the door closed, doesn't go in it, but then eventually he gets married and needs a bigger bedroom and has to move into this room. And weird stuff immediately starts happening. The closet starts opening by itself at night. Furniture starts moving around when he's not looking. But here's the craziest part. Jack's story isn't unique. When he starts talking to a bunch of other people in the Navy about his experience, it turns out a lot of them also feel like their homes are haunted. After some digging, I actually found out that this Navy base was built on Gunjawamp, a haunted swamp in Connecticut. I do a whole deep dive on it in my podcast, but there's something weird going on there.
Why are women so attracted to serial killers? Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, Charles Manson. These men have a lot in common. High cheekbones, strong jawlines, and symmetrical faces, but most importantly, they have murdered a combined 58 people that we know of. The more surprising reality is that when these men were convicted of these crimes, they received countless fan mail from female admirers. They would actually send them nude photographs, love letters, and would completely thirst over a guy that would eat them for dinner. Now, some claim women desire these men because they're the ultimate bad boy, and the woman can nurture him back to good. They think, oh, he would never kill me, and then they turn into the next victim. Others, such as Joe Rogan in his podcast, believe that this comes from an evolutionary benefit to become close to killers, because back in the day, murder was pretty common. So of course a girl would want to be with a guy who could prevent that. But ultimately, the question remains.
I escaped after 14 years in captivity where I suffered physical, mental, and sexual abuse. I am Yekaterina, and this is my story of liberation. When I was 19, I met a 37-year-old man named Vladimir Cheskadov at a train station. I was with my friend Oksana. He appeared to be a very nice person, and we became friends. He invited us to his house for drinks. We could not refuse and went with him. I did not know that there would begin a nightmare that would last 14 years. As soon as we entered, he threatened us and locked us in different rooms. During the time I was in his basement, he only came in to abuse me, and he only released me to clean, cook, and take care of his mother. A year later, he murdered my friend and forced me to help him get rid of her body. One day, Vladimir was very intoxicated and forgot to lock my door. Later, I heard an ambulance at home, and I knew it was because of Vladimir's condition. It was my only chance to escape, so I ran out until I found my sister. Finally, I was free. The nightmare was over, although these 14 years will always remain engraved in my mind.
This is the most disturbing and unsettling thing you will ever watch. This is called The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, and it's the most disturbing short film ever. It's written and directed by Ari Aster, who did Hereditary and Midsommar, and we all know how scary and messed up those movies are. The film follows the Johnson family, who is just a normal suburban family, but as the film goes on, a shocking secret is revealed, and this secret will make you sick to your stomach. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I remember my first time watching this and I couldn't stop saying, what the hell is going on? This film just has such an unsettling vibe to it, and it'll make you feel so uneasy. You can watch the whole film on YouTube right now, and it's only around 29 minutes. But don't let the short time fool you, this film is absolutely disturbing. After you watch The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, come back to this video and let me know your thoughts on it. This is completely disturbing and messed up, and not everyone can finish it. And you will find out extremely quickly when you start watching it. And a word of advice, whatever you do, never watch this with your parents.
After this woman told her friends that her ex was threatening to kill her, she vanished. Ebony Duncan from Missouri vanished in September. The 44-year-old woman was reported missing on the 7th of September after failing to show up at work. CCTV footage captured her the day prior to her going missing, leaving in a silver car which pulled up behind her after she finished work at around 6:11 p.m. Worryingly, she had told one of her co-workers that her ex-boyfriend was threatening to kill her, and the man in question is identified as Charles Smith Howell. Charles is actually already in police custody after being arrested on charges of illegally possessing ammunition. He's due in court on the 8th of January. He does actually already have a criminal history with convictions relating to substances, robbery and weapons. The car that picked Ebony up on the day in question is believed to be owned by Charles's girlfriend. Shockingly, it's been reported that police may have found Ebony's body. This came after police dogs located a deceased person in the woods of Kansas City. Police are requesting help from the public in locating the person of interest, Kiera Ransberg, as they require her for questioning.
This woman murdered her boyfriend for $30 million. 47-year-old Ina Canoyer poisoned her boyfriend, 51-year-old Stephen Riley, after she found out that he inherited $30 million. Unfortunately for Ina, Stephen was never going to receive any money. This all started when Stephen received an email from an anonymous person who claimed to be his distant relative and offered him $30 million for absolutely no reason. Stephen believed that this was real and arranged a time to meet with this person to sign off on the cash. And on September 3rd, Stephen and Ina went to the airport where this person was supposed to meet them, but they never showed up. Now, this is where things take a turn. Before going to the airport, Ina made sure that Stephen drank a cup of tea that she had made him, which was poisoned with antifreeze. It did not take long for Stephen to feel extremely sick, and while others tried to take him to the hospital, Ina said that he just had a heat stroke and he should just go home. Ina waited until the next day to call paramedics, and at this point, Stephen was already deceased. According to their close friends, Stephen was planning to leave Ina when he received the money and share all the money with his kids. But she wasn't gonna let that happen. She believed she had rights to his money as his common law wife. Unfortunately for Ina, there was never any money, so she did this all for no reason, and now she faces up to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
An arrest was made on Halloween this year relating to a Halloween cold case murder from 4 decades ago. In the early hours of Halloween 1982, Clifford Smith was murdered. The 24-year-old man was shot in the head and his body was dumped by the White River in Indiana. His worried wife had reported him missing to police, and there was no news for an agonizing month. It was then that animal trappers came across the victim's body on the 1st of December. However, frustratingly, the case went cold and Clifford's family went without any closure or justice for over 4 decades. Thankfully, this Halloween, 41 years exactly since the tragic killing, a man was arrested. 61-year-old Ronald Anderson was detained by police, and police state he will be held in jail until he appears in court. Police believe that Ronald was actually at the same gathering as Clifford on the night in question. They apparently both left together in the early hours of the morning. Police believe that Ronald took a shotgun with him from the house when he left. It's believed that he dumped the weapon back at the house and also went back to the victim's body to hide evidence a couple of days later. Interestingly, although usually with these cold cases, it actually wasn't new technology that has helped crack this case. Investigators have stated that it was simply a case of re-interviewing and also re-examining old evidence that they had.
This woman's boyfriend found CP images on her phone, and the images were of his own daughter. So meet Ashley Cheatham. She's from Oklahoma and she was just arrested last week after her boyfriend went through her phone and found one of the most disturbing things you can imagine. So initially, her boyfriend thought that Ashley might be cheating on him or doing something weird on the internet. So he decided to go through her phone and make sure she wasn't messaging other dudes. But when he went through her camera roll, he found disturbing, graphic photos of his own daughter in compromising positions being abused by Ashley. Now, immediately Ashley's boyfriend went into the police department and he was basically begging for a police officer to talk to him immediately so that he could report this behavior to the authorities. And after hearing the story and seeing the evidence, authorities went in immediately to go arrest Ashley. And now she's been charged with a number of felonies, including the essay of a child under the age of 12, the making and distributing of obscene material or CP, and some other drug charges. But this story still gets more disturbing if that's even possible. So while authorities were doing a background check on her after her arrest, they found out that Ashley was in the process of applying to work at a local elementary school. And according to some reports, she actually was posting online looking for churches that needed volunteers or workers to help work with the children. So needless to say, I don't know and I don't want to know exactly what she was planning, but this woman adamantly wanted access to children and she was determined to get that access. Sadly, her boyfriend's 3-year-old daughter was the victim and hopefully the only victim that we're going to find out of Ashley's. But yeah, this once again just goes to show that you cannot trust anybody, really. I mean, she's only 19 years old and she's already engaged herself in the most despicable crime you can possibly commit. So, good luck in prison, have fun, we won't miss you, Ashley. Davi Vanity from Blood on the Dance Floor is allegedly one of the worst pedophiles in the music industry. And to this day, he really has yet to face any real repercussions for his actions. So, Blood on the Dance Floor, if you don't know, was a huge electronic, alternative, emo, whatever you want to call them band from the 2000s, 2010s. And I remember them being huge in the scene. I used to drum in a metalcore band and I had a lot of friends that were fans of these guys. But ever since the year 2009, at least 21 different women have made a series of disturbing charges against Davi. These charges include SA, pedophilia, all of that. So 2 former band members, Gary Ecstasy and Jay Von Monroe, both left the band and said that Davi was a sexual predator. They got interviewed by people, they claimed that he was a very dangerous person. And Jay Von Monroe actually claimed that Davi forced him to tour without his HIV medication, which almost made him contract AIDS. Even people like Jeffree Star witnessed Davi behaving inappropriately with minors while they were on tour with him. And yeah, most of the accusers against Davi were underage at the time that he allegedly assaulted them. So as early as 2007, allegations against Davi exist. This all really started when a 14-year-old named Diana called into a radio show and claimed that she had been assaulted by Davi. The police came to her house the next day and she told them that she had connected with Davi on MySpace. He had offered to come dye her hair. He had driven across the state to be with her. And when her mother had left to go work her shift at night, Davi had made her perform oral on him. So disturbingly, after the police heard this, they actually made contact with Davi. And they told him that if he didn't have any further contact with the girl, the mom did not want him to be arrested. And so he told the officers, "I'm sorry, I didn't know she was so young," and they completely let him off the hook. He was never charged with the crime, even though this would be considered statutory rape, and he could be punished to 15 years in prison just for that offense alone. But yeah, like I said, over the years, 20 plus women have come forward and stated that Davi assaulted them when they were underage. Other people that knew him said they saw him doing these things. And yet the police have never taken any form of action against this guy. You know you're a shitbag when even the guy from Insane Clown Posse, Violent J, threatens to beat the shit out of you if he ever sees you. So every time he's confronted with all of this, Davi completely denies it. He says it never happened. He evades the question. And in recent years, Blood on the Dance Floor's music has been removed from services like Spotify and Google Play. In 2020, it should be noted that Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator launched an investigation into Davi. He interviewed people who were affected by him, who were assaulted by him. And currently, I'm saying currently as of today, the FBI states that they are actively investigating him for crimes committed in the past against minors. So let's all cross our fingers and collectively hope that finally Davi Vanity can be stopped and he can face some sort of repercussion for the horrible things that he's done.
This is the Baby Brianna case, one of the most horrendous cases ever explained. The Baby Brianna case is one of the most gut-turning cases you will ever hear about. Baby Brianna wouldn't live past 5 months old thanks to her mother, father, and uncle. On July 19, 2002, Stephanie Lopez, baby Brianna's mother, made a 911 call stating that her 5-month-old baby wasn't breathing. They then rushed baby Brianna to the hospital where they were unsuccessful at trying to bring her back, and she was pronounced dead. And once the autopsy was made public, the residents of the New Mexico town understood this just wasn't a terrible accident, but instead intentional. The autopsy revealed that baby Brianna endured more physical beatings than any human should have to experience in their lifetime, and she was only 5 months old. It was announced and ruled that baby Brianna died from craniocerebral injuries. She had visible bruisings and scabbing all over her forehead and head. Along with the scabbing and bruising, baby Brianna also had 2 skull fractures that were several days old. Baby Brianna also had signs of human bite marks, not just a few human bite marks, multiple, as in 15. She had 2 rib fractures that were 2 weeks old. She had been violently shaken at least twice in her lifetime due to her optical nerves being filled with new and old blood. She suffered bucket handle fractures caused by her legs and arms being violently forced, yanked, or pulled in different directions, and even out of their socket. Along with these fractures and head injuries, baby Brianna also had injuries consisting with sexual assault. According to baby Brianna's mother, Stephanie Lopez, and the father, Andrew Walters, the night of July 18th went something like this, and this was the last night baby Brianna was alive. Andrew got off work and went home to play video games. He played video games and drank beer with some other family members until 12:30 a.m. and he went to bed. He then said Stephanie got up around 7 a.m. and found Brianna unresponsive, prompting them to call 911. However, after more questioning, Andrew started to crack in his interrogation and suddenly he revealed the truth. Andrew admitted to biting his 5-month-old daughter and was able to identify the bite marks that he made. He stated that he was playing a little roughly with baby Brianna. He also mentioned that he and baby Brianna's uncle, Stephen Lopez, were throwing baby Brianna up in the air and not catching her, letting her hit the ground extremely hard. They even threw her up at the ceiling, smacking her head against it. Stephen Lopez, baby Brianna's uncle, admitted to drinking several beers that night. He stated he didn't remember starting sexual activity with his 5-month-old niece, but he said he stopped himself from committing a sex act because he knew it was wrong. These fatal injuries are what cost baby Brianna her life at just 5 months old. Andrew Walters, baby Brianna's father, was sentenced to 57 years in prison. Stephen Lopez, baby Brianna's uncle, was sentenced to 51 years in prison. And lastly, Stephanie Lopez, baby Brianna's mother, was sentenced to 27 years in prison. However, due to good behavior, she was released on parole early, which is just insane. Nobody that does something this horrific should ever get out of prison or stay alive. This case really rubs me the wrong way because baby Brianna was only 5 months old, not even experiencing 1 year of life. This is one of those cases where after you read it and research it, your day just feels weird. I hope these parents burn in hell, and may baby Brianna rest in peace.
What? Nothing there, mate. Nothing there. What? There's nothing there.
This girl was kept in a box and used as a sex slave for 7 years. 20-year-old Colleen Stan is an American woman who was kidnapped and held as a sex slave by Cameron and Janice Hooker in their California home for over 7 years between 1977 and 1984. Her case has received international fame and has been a subject of many books, films, and television series. On May 19, 1977, Colleen Stan was hitchhiking from her home in Eugene, Oregon, to a friend's home in Northern California where she was heading to a birthday party. Cameron Hooker kidnapped 20-year-old Colleen after picking her up. Colleen said she was a very experienced hitchhiker and had allowed 2 rides to go past her before accepting the ride with Cameron Hooker. Colleen said she felt confident climbing into the blue van because Hooker's wife Janice and their baby were in the car. They then stopped at a gas station along the way and Colleen went to use the restroom. And she said a voice told her to run out and jump out the window and never look back, but she never did, which she definitely regrets. When they left, they got on the highway and Cameron Hooker pulled over on the side of the road and put a knife to Colleen's throat, all the way until they got to an isolated area. She was then locked in a wooden box that was designed to prevent light, sound, and fresh air entering. After this, Colleen was tortured and kept locked in the box for 23 hours a day, until she was given a contract and forced to sign herself into slavery for life in January 1978. Her kidnapper also said that they were being watched by a powerful organization called the Company, and if she ever tried to escape, they would torture her and harm her family. Colleen then became a slave and her new name was Kay, and she was forced to call Cameron master. Cameron then started raping Colleen, and it was mostly consisting of oral rape. Cameron reportedly didn't want to have normal sex with Colleen because he considered that to breach his agreement with his wife. Instead, he raped her with objects. To avoid painful punishments, Colleen tried to comply with Cameron's commandments, which later led to her being allowed to go out to jog and work in the yard, and even help him with bigger stuff like an underground dungeon for more slaves. Even with an open door, neighbors, and a telephone, she never made an attempt to escape because her fear of the Company kept her from seeking help. Additionally, Stan was also allowed to visit her family by herself in 1981, but did not reveal her situation due to her fear of the possible consequences from the Company. Her family thought she was involved in some sort of cult, and they did not want to pressure her to stay in fear that she would stay away forever. The next day, Colleen returned for a second visit with Cameron posing as her boyfriend. Cameron feared that he had given his slave too much freedom and took her back to his home, where he locked her in the wooden box under his waterbed. She remained in the box 23 hours a day for the next 3 years. Colleen would go to the bathroom using a bed pen which she positioned under herself with her feet. Once Cameron's children had gone to bed, he would take Colleen out of the box and feed her and torture her. Colleen was not allowed to make any noise, and she had to stay still for 23 hours a day in the complete dark, with little to no air to breathe. In the summer, the box would get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. In 1983, Colleen was allowed to get a job as a maid at a hotel, and Cameron wanted her to become his second wife, which was a turning point for Janice, who is his wife. And in August 1984, Janice began struggling with herself and went to Colleen. She then told her that Cameron was not part of the Company and the Company wasn't even real. Janice then helped Colleen escape to a bus station where they had Colleen's parents help bring her home. Colleen Stan is still alive today, and she experiences PTSD and has extreme back and shoulder injuries, which is from being trapped in a small box for 7 years straight. This case is extremely gut-turning, and could you ever imagine this happening to you? Luckily, Cameron Hooker was found guilty of kidnapping and sexual assault and was sentenced to 104 years in prison.
This true crime case is a horrific warning to be very careful with who you're friends with at school. Christine Paulila from Long Island was diagnosed with alopecia and poor vision from an early age. Upsettingly, she was bullied at school regularly due to her appearance. She would wear thick glasses to help with her sight and wigs due to her hair loss. Children would be very cruel to her and run up behind her and snatch her wig off, leaving her humiliated. She would desperately try to do her makeup to look as nice as possible and would draw on her eyebrows to try and fit in. Then while attending high school in Euston, she made friends with some of the popular girls. These girls were Rachel Colorutis and Tiffany Rowell. The pair really supported Christine and helped her with improving her makeup skills to look even better. She was eventually named the school's Miss Irresistible in 2000. She was a far cry from the shy and insecure child she once was. Due to her newfound confidence, she started to date and she got a boyfriend. 17-year-old Christine started dating 21-year-old Christopher Snyder. Unfortunately, he was a known criminal and used to do substances, so understandably, Christine's friends and parents disapproved. Christine would end up using substances too while they were dating. The couple started having some quite shocking arguments, and one of them even resulted in Christine spending the night on Christopher's parents' front garden and threatening to kill them all. On the 18th of July 2003, the couple visited Tiffany's house. They had a sinister plan. Now, Tiffany lived in Clear Lake City and she was hanging out with her own boyfriend and his cousin Aldebert and Rachel. The friends' nice evening would begin to take a very dark turn. Christine and her boyfriend had planned to go to Tiffany's house to steal substances and then leave. Upon arrival, though, the pair started to have another argument. Shockingly, the two of them began shooting. It's reported that they fired at least 40 times. The 4 innocent victims all received multiple gunshot wounds and 3 were deceased. At this point, though, Rachel was alive. The poor girl mustered up some strength amongst all of the chaos and crawled through a puddle of her own blood. She was desperately trying to reach a phone to call for help. However, Christine spotted her and started beating her over the head with a weapon. As Rachel was dying, she called out, "Why?" Sadly, one of the victims, Aldebert, had moved to the area to escape violence in his hometown. The couple fled the scene, leaving very little evidence behind. They fled to a Walgreens where Christine was due to start work, and she clocked in like nothing ever happened. This was just over an hour after the horrific murders. The only evidence the police actually had to go off were the descriptions of the suspects from eyewitnesses in the neighbourhood who saw the pair leave. Police actually initially thought that the deaths were just substance related, but 3 years in, the truth was revealed. During this time, the murderous pair had broken up. Christopher ended up going to prison for stealing a car, and Christine went to rehab in Texas. While there, she met a man called Stanley Rott, and the pair would end up getting married. Now, this was in March 2005, and Stanley had no idea of the horrors that had gone on in 2003. It wasn't until Christine saw a news report on the TV with a police sketch of her that she decided to come clean to her husband. Instead of leaving her, he actually helped her evade police. The pair went into hiding for an entire year in San Antonio until police received an anonymous tip. Christine was arrested at the motel and Stanley told police what he knew. Christine tried to blame her ex and the pair were charged with murder. Frustratingly though, before police could get their hands on Christopher, in 2006 he took his own life. Christine was found guilty and was sentenced to life. She's never admitted to a motive for the crimes, but psychiatrists have speculated that it may have been due to jealousy. This case made me terrified to go to the cinema. This is the case of the horror in Screen 9. James Holmes was raised in California. His mum was a nurse and his dad was a scientist. From a young age, he was experiencing night terrors and allegedly actually tried to take his own life when he was just 11 years old. He was apparently obsessed with guns and weapons and had dreamed of becoming a mass murderer. Between May and July 2012, he legally bought 4 guns. Background checks were conducted and he was allowed the weapons. He also bought spike strips, which, if you don't know, pop the tyres of cars if they chase after you. On July the 19th, just hours before tragedy would unfold, James mailed his notebook to his psychiatrist. Inside the notebook, James detailed his plans to kill. The notebook was actually discovered later on undelivered. Just prior to entering a cinema in Aurora, James rang a crisis line to tell them about his plans to kill. However, the call was disconnected after just 9 seconds. At the midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises, CCTV captures James walking into the cinema. He walks into Screen 9, props open the door, and then walks back out again. Shockingly, he goes to his car and gets guns out and gas canisters. He re-entered the screen at about 12:38 PM and set off 2 gas canisters. When he entered Screen 9 again, he immediately opens fire on the audience, instantly killing 10 people. 2 others later died in hospital from their injuries. An additional 70 people were injured. This was an absolutely packed out cinema. James also shot at people as they scrambled to exit the screen. His youngest victim was a 6-year-old girl. Witnesses said this all unfolded as there was actually a gunfight on the screen, and initially they all thought it was special effects and just part of the film. Police were actually on the scene very quickly after the first 911 call. James surrendered to the police and was arrested in the car park. He was apparently very calm when he was arrested and told police that he had booby-trapped his apartment. When police investigated his apartment, this was found out to be true. He was sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences.